We're having coffee tonight or this evening, but I just made it super hot. So I'll probably have to sit here for a few minutes before I can enjoy my coffee. We're still at Heron Lake. Still have a couple of days until we leave here. The weather was really nice today. We went down to the Echo campground and we met some really nice people down there, and we got to explore another area. Uploaded some videos of that today, and now we're back at camp. Just had some food and waiting for tomorrow. Tomorrow the wind is supposed to be out of control again, like over 20 miles an hour, closer to 30 I think is the forecast, and that's going to play havoc on our camp. So we'll have to take the tent down and just ride out the windstorm, but we are gonna, it's not supposed to be bad weather other than just the wind, which of course, you know, gets a lot of dirt in the air, and that can make allergies and stuff like that a little crazy. But we are going to do some exploring tomorrow and probably go to Elvado Lake, which is just down the road from here. The best trail, at least I think the best trail, I haven't done it, I was going to do it, but the best trail is the trail from here, from Heron Lake to Elvado Lake, and there's a path along the river, Chama River, but it's closed because they're building some stuff on it, some bridges or something, I don't even know, but you can't get down there. But if what the rangers told me is accurate, we can go to Elvado and we can hike back this way. It'd just be a down and back instead of a hike through, which is fine because we'd have to go back and get our car anyway. So I'm doing another live, and you know, I'm trying to think of what the best way to take this YouTube channel is, because I really like sharing the stuff we're doing, and I don't really know how it's all going to evolve. I mean, I know right now my videos suck, but they hopefully will get better. I don't know how that's going to happen, but I'm just uploading our experiences and having fun with it. And I'm very grateful that YouTube is already monetized my account, and I don't know what that means exactly, as I keep saying, but maybe tomorrow I'll start getting some numbers, because it will have been 48 hours since the monetization kicked in. But again, I'm not expecting anything, maybe a few pennies a month, you know, as we get started. So we're definitely going to have to up our game. So I'm thinking about what I would like to do, and you know, and I've done a handful of things trying to find some traction, trying to find a niche on Instagram, TikTok, with the website, and I just haven't been able to find something, you know, that grooves with my style. YouTube though seems to be, you know, a little more accepting of what we're trying to do, and I really appreciate that. So I can use these lives because I don't have a big audience that is interested in hearing what I've got to say yet, but down the road, if the channel is successful, or when the channel is successful, it'll be fun to look back and to see where we started, because I should have been doing this a year ago in July, whenever we started our trip, when we left to go to Nicaragua, or maybe even before, when we came up with the idea of traveling and going through everything we had to go through to get the kids' passports, and then selling all of our property, and just the crazy deal that was. But that's hindsight, because I wasn't going to do anything like this originally. Originally, we were just going to relocate to Nicaragua for a few years and apply for residency, which we did. But we got caught up with the lawyer, who was not on the up and up, and they kept delaying, blaming other people for the delays, and then started trying to charge us more money. And in that time, our 90-day visa expired. And pre-COVID, it was real easy just to make a day trip to Costa Rica, get a new 90-day stamp, But since Nicaragua requires a PCR test, even going to Costa Rica for a day and back would have ended up costing us, 600. But I estimate $600 on the low end, $600 US, and I just didn't want to do that. The other option was to renew every 30 days until the Nicaraguan government decided not to allow you to do that. And it's possible I could have kept paying this lawyer money and money, more money and more money and more money, and it's possible that maybe we would have gotten our residency. But I just got really, I'm just not, I don't do that, and I don't like it when people do it to me. I'm just not one of those people who spend money that way and deal with people like that. I believe in, you do what you say you're going to do, and I do what I say I'm going to do, and when that transaction is completed, if we want to start another transaction, if we want to continue, then we can come at it from as a starting point again. You just can't change the deal in the middle of the race, and especially when it comes to trying to hold something over my head, like your residency's in the balance for you and your children unless you pay us more money. And I just told them no, thank you. And so that's when we started our backpacking journey. And at that point, I just focused mainly on Instagram. I didn't really want to put the time into editing videos on YouTube, and we were fortunate enough to spend some time in Santa Marta, Colombia, with some people that were spending a lot of time doing YouTube, and I think they still are. And they would edit videos and spend so much time editing content, and it just confirmed my beliefs that people who do really nice YouTube videos, they spend a lot of time they put a ton of hours in, and that's great. And I do have some content creators that I really enjoy, and I'll mention them down the road sometime. They can kind of share my inspirations for what I'm doing. But I just watched a video that was put out today or yesterday about people talking about the amount of work that goes into having a loyal following and getting the clicks and getting the views and creating the content that people want to see. And I find all that stuff extremely, extremely helpful, because I do want to share our story, because I think our story has the ability to help people that need to hear it. And I tried so hard to get it out on Instagram. I couldn't get any traction. I've tried hard to get it out on Facebook, and the problem with Facebook is, again, getting the exposure. How do you get the exposure to get the people that you want to work with, or that you at least want to inspire? How do you get in front of those people? So the people that I really want to share our story with are single dads that are going through the struggle of getting their children, or dealing with separation from their children, but I don't want to coach them on how to solve those problems. I don't think I'm qualified. I'm not an attorney. I don't want to give legal advice. I'm not a counselor. I don't want to help people deal with their emotional issues, because I know firsthand how all that stuff is and how crazy it can be. However, I think by sharing our story, we can inspire people and give people hope that even though they're going through some difficulties, that's not the end of the road, and that perseverance and maybe even a little bit of tactics and I don't know, it's all's fair in love and war. Let's just say it that way. When you're being attacked and people are trying to take advantage of systems and manipulating things, then it's fair game for you to use the same tactics and to reciprocate. Some good coffee. So I've thought about doing a podcast in the past, but again, it would require more equipment. It would require me learning even more systems, and then it would require consistent internet and the ability to, to do it on a schedule. And right now, we're just here relaxing by the lake. But a week from now, when we're, traveling around southeastern Utah or northern Arizona, I don't know even where we're going to be staying because there's not really many campgrounds out there. There's lots of BLM land, lots of boondocking spots, but I don't know what internet reception, cell reception is going to be like. So I'm not counting on it. So I may be, offline for a few days, which I probably need to be. However, using YouTube, now that I've gotten all the creator tools opened up to me, which is a miracle, man. It's amazing. It's a big blessing for me, and I'm extremely grateful. Now I feel like I can use because I was listening to this podcast earlier on YouTube, and they were talking about some ways of making your channel better, and I do want to have good content. So I can use YouTube, and I can use these lives, and people can listen if they wish, or it'll be archived, and then later we can come back and we can listen to them and see where this all started, if it goes, and if it goes in any kind of significant direction. And maybe it won't. Maybe I'll never do another one. That's just the world we live in today. So what is our story? What is the point of being here and doing this? Well, honestly, it started with me a long time ago, because a long time ago I thought about, I had a couple of different YouTube channels over the years, but I mean, I've dealt with a lot of crazy stuff in my life, and I would get to these points in my life where I would just try to erase everything in my life. And so my YouTube channel that I had back around 2010, that had like tons of material on it, I think you can see part of that if you go in the Wayback Machine, but I don't think it's retrievable to retrieve my content. But I could be wrong. Maybe I could salvage all that. And the same thing about 2 or 3 years ago, I was using YouTube as a storage mechanism to store a lot of um, personal information, if you will, because I didn't have any way of storing digital data, and it's probably still on YouTube. It's nothing that I was doing wrong. It was just part of some of the personal attacks I was undergoing, and I just didn't have a way of preserving that information. And then I just decided that none of that was worth keeping anymore. The fight was over. The threat doesn't exist anymore. There's no need to hold on to all that stuff. But again, it may be in the Wayback Machine. I have no idea. But I never made any of that stuff public. It was all private. So I was already using YouTube in some ways years ago. And then there was a point in my life, especially when I was going through my divorce, and I didn't know how it was going to turn out, and I was having all those internal battles where I was thinking about, not being able to see my kids, or giving up my custody, right, full custody to my kids. I was having all these thoughts and this internal dialogue, and it was heartbreaking for me. But I've always been a nomad, and one of the things that I had thought was that I could travel the way I'm traveling now with my children, but I could travel and go to all the places that I just felt like I needed to go to in this lifetime, and I could just leave a video library for my children. And so that way, if they never knew me growing up, that there would at least be some kind of a digital record of who I was, and then they could, you know, determine that later whenever they were adults. They could just, watch all these YouTube videos that I had left behind and see who their father was. Well, I ended up with the kids, and I've had the kids now for since 2018. So in June, so in about a month and a half or so, 6, 7 weeks from now, it will be officially 4 years full time. The kids have been with me, and so that when that happened, when I got the kids full time, my life changed completely, and it became, instead of being this guy who dreamed about traveling and could do a lot of different things, then I became this full time dad with 2 little kids. My daughter was only 4 at the time, and so she was still very little, hadn't even started school yet, and my hands were full. And so for 3 years, I just did that. I just did get up, go to work. Kids went to school. I'd pick them up from school, go home, do homework, cook dinner, showers, good night, rinse, repeat. We do that every day. We did that every day until COVID started, and then when COVID started, I just unenrolled them from school, and they just started. They've been with me every day ever since. There's hardly been a day that they've been away from me. Um, their mom got sick in 2020 with cancer, and she passed away in January of 2021. So it's been just over a year since their mom passed. And in this last year, they do have some older sisters, but in this last year, especially since we left on the road in July, it's just been me and the kids. So that's kind of like the foundation for where we're at. And I uh, I just prefer this life. I think it's a better life for our situation because even a year ago, when I was still working and still doing the daily grind, I knew then that it was going to be unsustainable. There was no way that we were going to be able to get up and go work, 9 to 5 and be able to support ourselves. It was going to get out of control as it's happening now. I mean, I'm traveling and I see that, like, for instance, the price of fuel. If I was still working, most of my profits or a big chunk of my profits would be going to fuel costs because I've had my own businesses. Well, not to mention parts. It was getting harder and harder a year ago to find parts for my tools. I can only imagine what it's like now. So I decided a year ago to sell all of my stuff. And like I said, we were going to go to a different place and see if we could find a better place to live, maybe less expensive, maybe with like minded people. And that didn't, I mean, we found lots of good people along the path so far. And maybe they're fellow travelers just like we are. But we haven't found a place that's where we would want to settle down. Plus, there's just so much to see. So, sharing our story and our journey with other people, other parents that are struggling the same way that I struggled, is kind of like what I want to do with this channel. I want to be able to inspire parents to do more, to maybe change the pattern, change what they expect of themselves, change their lives for themselves and for their children, and not be so caught up in the expectations of the society around them. Because nothing is working properly anymore. And it makes it extremely difficult whenever you have a family to predict the future, because the whole time I was growing up, everything was pretty predictable. I mean, and a lot of people still try to follow all of these ideas that are no longer valid. You get on, like today, I was watching the YouTube creator's channel, and I agree with him 100% that nothing is predictable anymore. Careers, 9 to 5 jobs, are everything is so unstable. So having multiple income streams, having multiple ways of doing things is, the people that are doing it now are going to be the ones that are going to be ahead of the curve. A lot of people are still hoping that it'll get back to just some kind of normal routine like what it's always been, at least in my lifetime, but I just don't think that that's going to happen. And so people who are more vulnerable, more susceptible to the problems of society, they have to start thinking differently. And if you're a single parent, you're really vulnerable. And if you're a single dad, then there's not a whole lot of infrastructure built into our society that is supportive. A lot of people will pat you on the back and give you an attaboy, but that's about all you get. There's not anything built around what women have enjoyed for the last 50 years or 70 years. And that's fine. I mean, it's nothing to complain about. It's just something to recognize as it is it is a real thing. I get discriminated against more because I have children than I've ever in my life. And it gets disappointing and discouraging, but at the same time, I mean, it's not even up for debate whether or not my children come first. My children are always first, and no job, no other people, no other person, no other place on this planet will ever take priority over them. Even if I work myself to death trying to make things happen and work and try to give us some kind of a life worth living, there's nothing that I would I would take over them. And so those are the priorities. And I know there's lots of single dads out there that struggle. They struggle with a lot of things, and I think the reason they struggle with lots of things is because they're expecting to be treated the same way they've always seen single moms be treated. And the world is just not accepting single dads yet. I mean, there's more and more men getting their children. It's becoming a more of a thing, and there's lots of reasons for that. But the world is still not accepting of it on a large part. And if you are a single dad, a lot of times people are in awe of that. They don't understand it. And so, like, from my end of it, there's like no support system. I have no support system. I can visit my family if I wish, but no one ever, except for my grandma. My grandma will call and check on us every once in a while, but we don't get phone calls. We don't get much. A few family members on Facebook will give us thumbs up. Maybe they'll do a comment like, "Oh, that's such a pretty dress," or something like that. But that's about the extent. And it's been like that. It's been like that for years because I don't think people were prepared for me to end up with full custody of my children. But I don't want to get off on the custody battle too much. We'll talk about that later. And I can tell you kind of what I went through, and what it was like living, um, living that life, and how it made me feel. I mean, it was like one of the most horrible times in my life. But I just wanted to talk about how I know the journey we're on is one that needs to be shared, and how there's no other avenues to get this information out. Instagram has been a flop for me. Um, no matter what I've tried to do, I can't figure out their consistency, how to be consistent on Instagram. Um, Facebook, same thing. It's like, how do you get the audience? I have a core group of people that are friends and family, but they're not single dads. I've got one or two people that I've met along the way that are single dads, but that's just one or two people. And one of the guys, well, actually, both of them have tried to share my information on Instagram and stuff, which I appreciate. But again, it's just not a force multiplier. It's not a big enough force multiplier. But I'm in a lot of single dad groups on Facebook, and well, I should say I was. I've left a bunch of them because every time I have a suggestion, I get censored by the group. The administrators or the moderators, they take down my posts, and they threaten me with getting kicked out of the group, and I just don't want that. I don't want to participate in that. And I think what it boils down to is that I'm trying to offer solutions because I've had success, and what most people are doing in those groups are they're just patting each other on the back, and they're feeding the same nonsense that has been going on for a long time. It's and that's what I'm saying is that men are expecting to be treated the same way that mothers are treated, and and they're not the same. I mean, they don't need to be treated the same. They need to have a whole different way of being treated. And the biggest problem, I think, is that there's nobody offering real um, mentorship. Might be the good way of saying it. And speaking from my own experience, when you find yourself caught up into a situation like that, it basically upends your life. And I imagine it's like that on the other side too. But what is lacking is someone who can explain what's going on and why it's going on and give you maybe some clarity or even listen to you, talk. You can talk to a professional, but that takes a lot of money. And a lot of men, or at least when they're in that situation, some of them can throw lots of money at attorneys and stuff like that. But again, you're trying to solve a problem just like you would solve a plumbing problem, or if the car is not working properly or you have a flat tire, you're gonna fix it and get everything fixed again. But sometimes when you're dealing with other people, there's nothing to fix, and so you have to just come up with a way that you're going to handle the situation. And the system that's been built up all these decades, ex- for the most part, at least my perspective and my belief, expects men to just roll over and take the position of being the second parent. If they even get to be a parent at all, they should consider themselves lucky. And if they get to see their children, they should consider themselves lucky. And they tried that with me, and I was just not accepting of it. So even the people in my family, my friends, everybody, they just couldn't understand why I wouldn't accept that role. And and then when I ended up getting the children, they still couldn't believe it. They couldn't believe it. And so there wasn't this thankfulness or this gratitude or this celebration of overcoming such odds and all these unjustified attacks and stuff like that. It was more like it was disbelief. It's like, no, there's no way you could have ever been successful. And so that's what dads are facing. I know it's been this way for a long time. Parental alienation. A lot of men get alienated, but the reason I think they do is, again, because they're looking to the wrong places for the answers. An example that pops into my head is an attorney, because I did this. You hire an attorney and you want to know what's going on. You want the problem resolved. So you're just like trying to blow up that attorney's phone. You're just like, why don't you call me back? I need to talk to you. I need to know what's going on. When am I going to see my kids? Blah, blah, blah. And that's not their job. That's not what they're there for. Their job is not to counsel you or to be a grief specialist. They're there to work through the legal process, the administrative process. And so that's not a good avenue for people to resolve their issues. But that's one of the few things that fathers have. That's one of the few places that men have to go whenever they're facing separation from their children, is they try to talk to the wrong people. And no one's telling them that, hey, you shouldn't be trying to talk to this person about this situation because that's outside of what their job is. So that's kind of part of this journey that I want to share with the YouTube channel, the story that has brought us to this point, because I think it's a valid story and I think a lot of people could benefit from it, and maybe even we could really even help people, even because So many people are lost. So many dads are lost. So many men that are being alienated from their children are lost. And a lot of times it's just because the system is built that way. And everybody you think is on your side views the system in the same way. It's a society thing. And it'll take 20 years of, of hard work to get it to go back the way it should be, to be more balanced. So we can show the videos of camping, we can show the videos of climbing mountains and traveling all over the world, but there's another story behind this, and that story is the story of helping people um, not lose hope, you know, because there was no one there to help me. There was nobody. There was never a person that I could call and talk to. No one wanted to listen. No one wanted to hear it. You know, no one understood my side of the story. No one understood how I could love my children so much. And why I didn't want to just pay child support, which I didn't have a problem with paying child support. I did pay child support, but I didn't want to be alienated from my children. And that was the bigger story, because when I finally did end up with my kids, the system, the people on the other side that were saying that I was such an awful person all the time, trying to paint this picture of me and what kind of a person I was, they they were 10 times worse than I ever was. You know, it's amazing. It's amazing the difference in the in the way everything flip-flopped. You know, everything flip-flopped. And no one's ever going to love your kids more than you. No one. I don't care who you are. I don't care what you've done. I don't care what people say about you. No one is going to ever love your children more than you. And people need to hear that. And then you need to do something. So, what can you do, you know, to change the narrative of your life? Um, I would suggest taking a trip. I would suggest, you know, like maybe a weekend camping somewhere close to home. Take your kids camping close to home. This is the perfect time of year. Well, maybe it's not the perfect time of year. I think fall is much better time to camp because the weather's a little more stable. Spring is just super turbulent. But you should take a trip, and if you can, take a bigger trip. You know, go on a cruise, take a fly to Mexico. You know, do something completely outside the box. But the reason I say take a trip is because it's going to be enjoyable for everyone, and you're going to see, you know, your children having experiences, and you're going to get to like basically live through their experiences as well as have your own. And if you haven't traveled very much and have always wanted to, there's no better way to do it than to take your kids and do stuff with them that you never got to do. You know, that was another thing about my experience growing up. Um, we we didn't ever do much. I mean, I would get to go spend summers with, you know, my cousins, stay with my aunts, uncles, cousins, my grandma, long weekends, and those were awesome. They were good escapes from the world that I lived in, which was a very violent world. But there was never any family trips. I mean, maybe by the time I was maybe 13, 14 years old, I was already living with my grandparents. But when I'd go back to visit my mom, I think we did a few camping trips um, in Central Texas, South Texas, but there was never any trips um, of any significance. And there was lots of times that we were told we would get to do stuff, and we were never we never did it. I mean, it was just never done. It was like, oh well, I know what we said that, but we're not going to do it anyway. And that matters. It really matters. It really matters whenever you tell people something and then just blow it off like it doesn't matter because they're kids. You should treat everybody with respect. And sometimes things happen and you can't follow through all the time. Things happen with us all the time and we have to change our plans. But I always have the respect for my children where I tell them exactly why and what's happened, and then try to make it up to them somehow. Maybe we just postpone it. We were going to go to Chichen Itza, because my son has been wanting to go to Chichen Itza since he was, man, I think first grade. I'm thinking he just came home one day wanting to go to Chichen Itza. And I remember that because I was impressed that he could even say Chichen Itza. And then I wondered where he heard it, and it must have been something they talked about at school. So it just kind of hung with us. And then we were just in Mexico. So when I knew we were going to go to Mexico, I I worked out a plan to go to Chichen Itza, and it's not so easy to get to Chichen Itza if you haven't ever been there. And where we were crossing from Guatemala into Mexico was at Tapachula, Mexico, which is it's close to the Pacific Ocean. And Chichen Itza is on the Caribbean side of Mexico on the Yucatan. And from the Pacific Ocean to the Yucatan Peninsula, it's pretty far. So I worked out the plan, and the way I worked it out was that we would cross at Chichen Itza, I mean, not at Chichen Itza, at Tapachula, and then we would go to the nearest airport was Tuxtla Gutierrez, Mexico, which is in Chiapas, and we would fly from Tuxtla Gutierrez to Cancun. And at that point, and this is how I didn't know the geography that well at that point myself. So my plan was just to take a day trip from Cancun to Chichen Itza and back to Cancun, and then fly to Mexico City and continue our journey north. But once I had already bought the plane tickets from Tuxtla Gutierrez to Cancun, and then when I started looking at booking the day to Chichen Itza is actually closer to Merida. And because our time, we didn't, we were on a time, we had just a limited amount of time. So we didn't have time to go back and forth, back and forth. So what I decided to do was just go to Merida on a bus, an ADO bus from Cancun, and then we rented a car. I rented a car through Expedia, and I've rented many cars in the United States in the past. This is my first time trying to rent a car in Mexico. So I rented the car on Expedia, and then we were going to be in Merida like 3 days. We were going to go one day from Cancun to Merida. The next day we were going to pick the car up that night, and the next day we were going to do a day trip to Chichen Itza. And then the day after that, I think we were going to have one day to explore Merida, and then the next day we were going to fly to Mexico City. So that was kind of the itinerary. So we ended up getting I ended up getting my phone stolen in Cancun, which we missed our bus to Merida. So we had to buy another bus ticket. We got in really late, and the bus terminal in Merida is not near the car rental place. The car rental places are by the airport. So then we're in this new city in Mexico. It was already after dark. We're tired. It was a very stressful, traumatic day dealing with the stolen phone. And then we have to go get our rental car. So we figure out, I think we used a taxi or Uber. I think we used a taxi because my phone had been stolen. We didn't have my Uber app, wasn't uploaded to my son's phone yet. So somehow we got to the car. Actually the Uber place took us to the airport. I'm trying to remember the story because it's been a few weeks. It's been a month or two since we were there. We went to the airport. The airport the car rental place didn't have an actual kiosk in the airport. So we had to take a shuttle back to their place, which was just a couple of miles from the airport, kind of in this little warehouse district by the airport. And when we went in to get the rental car, with a straight face, I swear, these people, they wanted me to buy $500 worth of insurance. And I was like, no, I've already paid for everything online. I'm not paying anything extra. And they were like, okay. So they typed some more stuff, and they were like, well, then it'll be an $8,000 US deposit. And I'm like, it's a 1 day car rental. I'm not giving you $8,000 deposit for the car. So I was tired. It had been a bad day already. I didn't want to argue anymore. So I just said thank you, and the kids and I just left. I lost the rental money. I haven't ever even filed a claim or complained or anything about it. Just suck it up, buttercup. So then we had to try to get to our Airbnb, which again, we have no idea where we're even at in this new city. So we are wandering around in this warehouse district. There's no taxis, there's no Ubers, we don't have a phone that has Uber on it. So there's a restaurant, and we walk over to this restaurant, and we're asking the security guard outside if he could call us a cab, and the restaurant calls the police on us. And because we're just outside their restaurant with all of our luggage, me and two kids. And luckily, though, the security guard, after me giving him a hard time about not being helpful, called us a cab. And at the same time the police showed up, the cab showed up, and we were able to just kind of like get out of there before the police gave us too much. Actually, they didn't even talk to us. They were still interviewing the restaurant people. So we didn't get to go to Chichen Itza, to make a long story short. And it was disappointing for me as much as I'm sure it was disappointing for my son. However, we're planning another trip back to Mexico already, which we talked about in our last live. We're going to go back in November, but the nature of that trip is going to be transiting. We're going to go around the globe. We're going to try to go completely around the globe in 1 year. And Chichen Itza is probably not going to be on that itinerary either, because like I said, it's not easy to get to. It's way out in the Yucatan. But I've explained this to him, and he was there, and he saw, and I told him we would go and make it up someday. So I do have plans to spend 5 months in Mexico at some point, and we're not only going to go to Chichen Itza, but we're also going to go to Palenque, and so we'll get to see a lot of the ruins. But even though we didn't get to go to Chichen Itza, we still went to Tikal, and we still went to Teotihuacan outside Mexico City. And we've been doing petroglyph stuff here. We've been to the Alcove House up at Bandelier National Park. We've been to the petroglyph sites in Albuquerque. And as we go up into the Four Corners in a couple of days, we're going to be doing Mesa Verde, and we're going to be doing a lot of the Anasazi and all the ancient civilizations. And then we've been to the Gold Museum in Bogota, Colombia, and got to see a lot of the artifacts there. So we're getting to see lots of that kind of culture. But just because circumstances were outside of our control, like with the phone getting stolen and the crazy amount of money that the car rental company tried to stick us for, it changed our plans that day. But it doesn't change our plans long term. It was just a little bit of a setback. We're still going to go to Chichen Itza. We're still going to do it. It just may not be for a couple more years, or it may be 20 years. I don't know. But we're still going to do it. But I had the decency and the respect to still, even though my children were along for that crazy ride, I still set them down and explained to them exactly what happened, what we went through, and why we weren't going to be able to do the day trip to Chichen Itza. And the next time, I'll probably just take a tour bus. It'll probably be a lot easier just to take a tour bus there, and then maybe take a Colectivo back if there's one that runs. You just have to kind of figure all that stuff out as you're going along. None of this stuff is super easy unless you can afford, but man, that takes a lot of money. and I can't see paying people. Some of the stuff we do is so easy for us to do ourselves. I can't see just throwing money at it, and part of me likes to solve the problems. That's part of what I like to do is, get into these situations and figure things out because um, it's not so easy. I mean, if you can just pay your way through this life, then a lot of stuff things come a lot easier because that's all people want. All people really want is money because it has the illusion of making your life better. And I agree that it can afford some luxury. And there's times when I wish we had more money for sure. But at the same time, the planet belongs to all of us, and we're all here for this one lifetime and this experience. And I want to have the best experience I can. And if our story and if the things that we've gone through just help people understand that they're not the only ones going through it, then that would be worth all the effort that I'm putting into trying to find the foothold for us on social media. And I don't even care about the money. I mean, I'll get into my perspectives about money later, and it may surprise you, but maybe it wouldn't because if you've been following us for any length of time, you see we do a lot with very little. We're able to do a lot, um, but again, it's just because I don't really prioritize the pursuit of money. I want experiences and I want a life worth living. But so that's the dad side of the YouTube channel, and I sure hope it doesn't violate any kind of YouTube guidelines or something. I hope I can talk about this stuff without getting penalized because it's a story that needs to be told. But there's also another part of this that I really hope to share, and it's kind of what I'm doing now with the videos, just to kind of get some content out there and get some followers. And that is, you can't find good information. Like today, I uploaded a video about us using the little toaster, the camp toaster, and I put in, was it the camp toaster? No, it wasn't the camp toaster. I'm sorry. I'm trying to think. It was when we were going to the Echo Amphitheater. I wanted to just see if there was basically a fee to get in so I could take, because I haven't been carrying any cash with us since we've been back in the United States. When I'm out of the United States, all I do is I don't use my debit card because I'm scared of someone cloning my card. So we go to, we use a lot of local currency. Since we've been back in the U.S., I've hardly had a single day where I've had any cash in my pocket, so I'm just using my debit card. But out here in some of these remote areas, people don't have, they're still taking cash only. And you go to some of these campgrounds and these parks, and they just have like a little mailbox type deal where you just have to drop some money in, and if you don't have exact change, there's nobody there to give you change. So I wanted to do a little research, not a lot. I didn't spend more than just one search, but I just punched in Echo Amphitheater into Google, and or YouTube, and the videos that popped up were several years old. And there was one from Oppenheimer Ranch, which is one of the YouTube channels I like to follow, and they were there because they just live right up here in Pagosa Springs. But so they were there, and they did like a 1 minute and 14-second video, but it was talking more about the legend of why the bloodstains were on the rocks, and it wasn't even very informative uh, other than that. So doing these short videos hopefully will give people content for someone like me who wants to go and stay somewhere. We're staying in Heron Lake State Park, and the reason we're spending 9 days here in Heron Lake is because my original plan was to go to Navajo Lake, which is between here and where we're going next. And so I was going to spend 4 days here and 4 days there. But when I was doing my research, I called this lake, and I talked to somebody, and they were very helpful and told me what I should do, and I took their advice. And then I called the other lake, and no one ever answered. And I called and I called and I called and I called, and no one ever answered their phone. And for me, that was good enough for me to not want to go there. So we just ended up taking, instead of spending 4 days here and 4 days there, we just decided to stay here 9 days. And that's kind of how I came to that conclusion. But I've been uploading a ton of videos about Heron Lake, and again, I know they're not great. They suck. They're videos that are not edited. They're raw. They're just there. But the cool thing is that they're evergreen, and if somebody's wanting to come to Heron Lake, they can put Heron Lake into Google or YouTube, and our videos will pop up, and they can watch some of the videos if they wish to. And then they can contact me if they have any more specific questions, and I'm happy to answer any of those questions. And the same thing goes for any dads or even any single moms. I mean, if there's anything that I can do, any help that I can give you, any conversation that you'd like to have, I'm more than happy to have that conversation with you. Or what are you combing your hair with the noodle thing? I don't know what this is called. I don't know what the proper name for it is, but I know it's not a brush. And my daughter's trying to brush her hair with it, but I guess we don't really use it on it. It was just in a thing I bought at a Goodwill to get us some camping utensils, and this was part of the package. I probably won't ever use it. Here, you can comb your hair. So, yeah, I'm willing to have those conversations. So if anyone, wants to chat, just you can just hit me up. That's fine with me. Um, and if you want to follow along, follow our journey, subscribe. I would follow, because coming up November, if everything goes according to plan, on November, 6 months from now, anything can happen. Everything's extremely volatile and unpredictable. But if November comes along and there's not any big changes or setbacks, then we'll be starting our next world tour. And instead of doing Central America and Colombia, we're going to try to hit every continent. Oh, excuse me. We're going to try to hit every continent, and with the exception of Antarctica. I don't have any desire to go to Antarctica, but I would if the right opportunity made a present of itself. I would definitely go, at least for a couple of days, just to put my footprints in the snow. That would be cool. But um, we're definitely going to do South America and Europe and Asia, and try to check the African box. Even if we can't do Morocco, Algeria, and Tunisia, we should be able to do not Libya, Egypt. Excuse me. Egypt's pretty easy. You just cross over from Jordan or Israel, um, and this is, we're looking at realistically probably January, February before we're in Africa, before we're trying to make that um, happen. And if we can't go to Morocco for some reason, and we have to do Egypt, then that'll be even later in the year, because we'll come from the other direction. We'll come from Turkey and down, probably through. We'll probably have to cross through Iraq, because Syria. I don't know if Syria's stable yet or not. I need to check that out. I haven't heard anything about it, but it can take years to recover, from those conflicts, and they're probably still fighting over there. Um, but just because I haven't heard anything doesn't mean that they're not fighting. But we'll see once we get there. last night, and then I guess lastly, the last thing that we can talk about before we get off this thing is the weather has been better. Last night it was much warmer. It was up in the 30s versus in the 20s. Today was a beautiful day. The wind wasn't out of control, but like all good things, I guess they must come to an end. And tomorrow, by 10 o'clock in the morning, we're supposed to have winds up over 20 miles an hour sustained again, and it's supposed to last all day. And then the same thing again on Sunday. So we've got 2 days of brutal winds coming, and hopefully they'll die down by the evening time so we can at least sleep in our tent and not have to camp out in the car. But the wind has been very unbearable for 3 weeks that we've been traveling in New Mexico. Has it been 3 weeks, maybe a month already? It's been extremely unbearable, and I guess we could keep moving around and try to find a place that isn't as windy. But from here, we're just going further west and out into the desert, and I don't know what the wind is like over in that area, but I'm hoping that whatever this stream of air is that's blowing through New Mexico, I'm hoping that it's not so bad when we get to Utah, because we're going to have about 9 days or 10 days that we're going to be out camping in Utah and down into Arizona. And I don't want to have to deal with the wind. The wind has been, we just don't have the equipment for it. We just don't have the equipment to handle the wind. So anyway, we got about 3 minutes till we hit the hour mark. I wonder if I can show you the lake. The wind has died down. Can you see the lake? Look at how amazing that is. And that's what I'm saying, man. If you're a single parent and things are not going your way and you feel like everything is just too heavy, you need to do something different. You need to quit trying to fit into the box that everyone wants to put you in. And you need to get out here and do this type of stuff with your children, with the people you love. We're the only people in this campground. I think there might be some boondockers down there. Oh, there's a car. I see a car there. I don't know if they're camping though, because people come through the campground a lot because the highway's right there. There may be some boondockers down there staying in an RV. Let me see if I can show you. Where would they be on your screen? Right there. That might be them. But they're not up in the campground. They're down by the lake. And other than them, and they just came in yesterday. But other than them, there's like nobody. Oh, there's somebody walking there. And then they may be some more campers, because these are reservation sites. So if you come to Heron Lake or any state park in New Mexico, you can make reservations. It's very inexpensive. It's like $10 a night, and there's like a reservation fee, of course. But then you get to your site, and like here's an example of a reservation. So your site will have this tag on it, and it'll have your check-in date, checkout date, the campsite that you're in, and your site number, and how many occupants, how many vehicles. And this is basically your ticket, your permit to be in the campground. But you do that online. It's easy peasy. But I've noticed that in some of the places that we've been staying, there's sites reserved, but people are not showing up, and it probably has everything to do with the wind, because the weather, other than getting one night, was really cold here. But dropping down into the high 30s at night, if you're bundled up, if you got good sleeping bags, that's not a bad night camping. But anyway, all right, there's the lake. And the mountains, can't see any snow-covered mountains from here, but there's still lots of mountains with snow, but you have to kind of go further out to see them. And Colorado is about, I would guess, maybe 20 to 30 miles that way. All right, have a good night. We'll talk to you again soon.